Hello, dear friends. I hope you had a peaceful and relaxing day. Now it's time to let go of all the stress. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and step with me into a calm, dreamy world of bedtime stories. So let's begin tonight's tale. And after the story, don't forget to tell me how you liked it, and when and where you're listening from. I'll be waiting in the comments. It was raining again. Not the loud, thunderous kind of rain that frightened birds from their trees. No, this was softer, like a whisper across the rooftops, like someone playing a lullaby on invisible strings. Mira stood by the window of her tiny hill station cafe, staring out into the misty evening. The warm light from inside cast a golden halo around her face, and the steam from her cup of chai curled upward like a secret trying to escape. She always loved the rain. It made her feel less alone. 10 years had passed since she left the city life behind and opened Café Chitij, a peaceful little space nestled between winding mountain roads and sleepy pine trees. She served steaming soups, honey cakes, and spiced tea to travelers passing through. But tonight, there were no travelers, just the rain. And him. Chapter 2, The Stranger. He came in just before closing, his coat soaked, his hair dripping with rainwater, eyes hidden behind round, fogged-up spectacles. Mira was wiping down a table when she heard the little bell above the door chime. She turned and saw him standing there, unsure, hesitant. "Come in before you catch your death," she said softly, offering him a towel. He smiled, just enough to be polite, and stepped inside. "Sorry, the road was closed. I was walking and found this place." "You're lucky you found it at all," Mira chuckled. "This cafe doesn't exist on Google Maps." "I like it already," he replied. But drying his hair, he sat by the window where the rain tapped like a memory trying to return. Mira poured him a cup of her signature cinnamon cardamom chai and set it down without asking what he wanted. He looked surprised. "You just knew?" "I've been doing this long enough," she said. "I can read a tea preference better than palm lines." Chapter 3. Tea, Rain and Stories. They didn't talk much at first. Just the quiet clinking of spoons and the gentle hush of the weather. Then he broke the silence. "My name's Arjun," he said. "I'm a writer." Mira raised her eyebrow, amused. "So you're the brooding, rainy day kind?" "Something like that," he laughed. "I came here looking for solitude. I didn't expect this. A cozy cafe in the middle of nowhere? And a barista who can read tea preferences." Mira smiled faintly. She hadn't laughed like that in a long time. Arjun stayed until closing, writing something in a small, leather-bound notebook. As he got up to leave, he paused at the door. "Do you open tomorrow?" "I live upstairs, so yes." "I might come by," he said. Then he left. Chapter 4, Silent Mornings. The next morning, the rain had softened to a mist. The cafe smelled of freshly baked bread, wet pine and vanilla. Mira moved slowly, setting the chairs, humming a song from her childhood. At 9:07 a.m., the bell rang. "Arjun?" He sat at the same table, smiled the same polite smile, and drank the same chai. This time he asked for toast. They didn't speak much, but somehow silence between them felt natural. Day after day, he came, he wrote, she served. Occasionally they spoke about books, the mountains, her cafe, the stories he was writing, but never about the past. Until one day, he asked, "Why do you live here alone?" Mira hesitated, then said, "I wasn't always alone." And that was enough. He didn't pry. He just looked at her with soft, understanding eyes and changed the subject. Chapter 5, The Painting. A week later, Arjun came in with a canvas wrapped in cloth. "I painted something," he said. "It's not very good, but I wanted to give it to you." Mira opened the cloth and gasped. It was a watercolor of the cafe, the soft light, the steam, the window, even her silhouette. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I didn't sign it," he said. "I thought maybe it belonged to both of us." That night, after he left, she hung the painting behind the counter. Then she stood there for a long time, staring at it, wondering why her heart felt strange, like something that had been asleep for years was slowly waking up. Chapter 6, Words Left Unsaid. The days stretched into weeks. One morning, Arjun didn't come, nor the next. Mira waited, trying not to notice the ache in her chest. On the third day, a young boy arrived at the cafe with a small envelope. "Arjun gave this to me. He said, I should give it to you if he didn't come back." Mira opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "Mira, I didn't know I would find you here. I didn't come to fall into something I couldn't finish, but being near you felt like pages I'd long forgotten. I'm leaving because if I don't, I won't be able to. If we were different people in a different life, maybe I would have stayed. You made me remember what it was like to be alive. Thank you. The rain outside grew heavier, almost in tune with her silence. Chapter 7. Echoes in the Rain. That evening, Mira sat alone with the letter in her lap and the painting on the wall. She didn't cry, she just listened. To the rain, to the quiet, to the memories that now lived in her cafe like soft ghosts. She poured 2 cups of chai, set one across the table from her, just in case he came back. Sleep. Chapter 8. Autumn and Absence. 3 months passed. The rain stopped, and autumn came slowly, spreading golden leaves across the mountain paths like forgotten promises. Mira still ran her cafe. She still made cinnamon cardamom chai every morning, and sometimes, just sometimes, she poured 2 cups instead of 1. She never moved Arjun's painting, and she never removed his letter from the drawer beside the cash register. It stayed there, folded and reread more times than she could count. Visitors came and went, as they always had. Tourists snapped photos of the misty hills. Locals stopped by for warm bread and ginger tea. But no one asked about the second teacup, and Mira never offered an explanation. She found herself writing again, something she hadn't done in years. Nothing elaborate, just quiet thoughts in the margins of her old recipe book. Some people walk in like rain, soft, sudden, beautiful, and gone. Chapter 9. The Return of Silence. One early October morning, the door creaked open. Mira looked up with a small flicker of hope, but it was only an old couple, holding hands and laughing at the wind outside. She smiled at them, offered them seats by the heater, and brought out apple scones. But the ache in her chest stayed. That night, she walked to the edge of the cliff nearby. The one Arjun once told her reminded him of poetry. She stood there, staring into the sky, letting the cold wind comb through her thoughts. She whispered into the wind, "Where are you now?" Only the rustle of pine leaves answered back. Chapter 10. A visitor from the city. In mid-November, a woman stepped into the cafe. She was elegant in a quiet way, dressed in a long maroon coat with tired but intelligent eyes. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm looking for someone who might have known Arjun Verma." Mira froze. "I knew him," she replied. "He stayed here for a few weeks." The woman smiled sadly. "I'm his editor. He sent me pages, unfinished ones. He mentioned you once." "What did he say?" The woman hesitated, then took out a small bundle of papers from her bag and placed them on the table. "He said he wrote this story for someone who made him feel again. I believe that someone is you." Chapter 11. The Unfinished Manuscript. Mira unfolded the pages carefully. The title on the top sheet read, "Whispers of the Rain, a Story Without an Ending." Her heart caught in her throat. She read the first line aloud. There was a woman who brewed tea like it was a language of its own, and a man who had forgotten how to feel until she poured him a cup. She kept reading, each word painting her cafe, her laughter, her silence. It was her. She was on every page, every pause, every line that ended with a comma instead of a period. But halfway through, the story simply stopped. The last sentence read, "He knew he had to leave, not because he didn't love her, but because he did." Mira closed her eyes. That night she didn't sleep. She sat under a blanket, a candle burning beside her, the manuscript in her lap. And in that silence she cried, not because he was gone, but because he had loved her in silence. Chapter 12. Letters Never Sent. The next morning, Mira wrote a letter, not to send, but to say what she hadn't been able to. "Dear Arjun, I read your words. They held me like the wind holds forgotten leaves. You said we were pages, but I think we were a chapter, and I want you to know, some stories don't need endings to be complete. Come back, or don't, but know that your tea will always be waiting."
Mira!
She folded it gently, tucked it between the manuscript pages, and placed it inside a wooden box behind the counter. Then Chapter 13, Snow and Dreams. Winter came. Winter came. Snowflakes floated down like tiny feathers from a sleeping sky. Mira's cafe was now a warm beacon in the white silence of the mountains, and on one quiet evening in December, Mira had a dream. Arjun stood at the door again, dripping with melted snow, holding a red scarf. He didn't speak, He just looked at her. She reached out, but he faded. She woke up with tears on her cheek. Outside, snow was still falling. Chapter 14. One more letter. On New Year's Eve, Mira found another envelope slipped under the cafe door. It was sealed with red wax and smelled faintly of sandalwood. She opened it with trembling hands.
Mira.
I'm not sure why I'm writing this. Maybe because silence has grown too loud. I couldn't stay, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to. But every time it rains, I think of you. Your cafe, your chai, your quiet eyes. I'm coming back if you'll still have me. Mira stared at the letter. Then she smiled through her tears, whispered into the snow-covered silence, "Tea will be waiting." End of Chapter 15. The Wait. Winter held the hills in its frozen arms. Trees stood bare like open hands reaching to the sky, and the paths to the cafe were layered with snow. Mira didn't know which day he'd come, or if he truly would. She didn't change anything in the cafe. The painting Arjun had given her still hung behind the counter. His manuscript rested in her drawer, and every morning 2 cups of chai were brewed instead of 1, just in case. Some evenings she imagined the bell would ring. Her heart would leap, only to find it was just wind teasing the chimes. But still, she waited. Chapter 16. The Man in the Mist. One early January afternoon, the sky turned silver. Snow began to fall in soft, delicate sheets, muffling every sound. Mira stood behind the counter, humming quietly as she sliced banana bread. The cafe was empty, just like most days lately. Then the bell rang. She turned. A man stood there, a little thinner with more stubble, snow clinging to his coat, eyes tired but unmistakably Arjun. Neither spoke. His breath hitched, her hands froze mid-motion. "I got lost," he said. "I didn't know how to come back." "But you did," she whispered. He took a step forward. "Is there still a cup of chai left for me?" She didn't answer. She just turned, poured him a cup from the second kettle, his kettle, and set it on the table by the window. The same table, the same seat. He sat down. She joined him. Neither needed to explain anything. The silence said it all. Chapter 17. The chai that spoke outside. The snow continued falling, white, slow, dreamlike. Inside, the cafe glowed with warmth and memory. They sipped their tea slowly. "I read your letter," she said softly. "I meant every word of it," he replied. "I wrote you one too, but I never sent it." He smiled faintly. "Will you read it to me?" "No," she said, almost laughing. "Some things are better left between pages." He looked at her, really looked, her eyes, her quiet strength, the way she never asked why he left, only how he returned. "Mira," he said gently, "I don't want to leave again." "You don't have to." Chapter 18. Stories in the firelight. That night, after closing the cafe, Mira and Arjun sat by the fireplace in her upstairs room. He read to her from his manuscript, the same one she'd read months ago, only now he had new pages. He had written more, about their first meeting, the rainy evenings, the chai, her laughter, the silence, the space between them that always felt filled with meaning. And then, the part she hadn't read yet. He returned not to find her, but to return to the version of himself he lost somewhere along the road. He didn't know if they would be lovers or just 2 souls that needed each other in a life of chaos. But he knew this. She was the only chapter he ever wanted to rewrite. Mira closed her eyes and rested her head against his shoulder. No more words were needed that night. Only warmth, only closeness, only breath and stillness and the memory of rain. Chapter 19. Spring will come. Weeks Arjun stayed. He began helping around the cafe, chopping herbs, rearranging bookshelves, sketching small art cards for customers. Mira watched him in quiet amusement, wondering how a man so thoughtful could vanish for months and still fit back into her world like he never left. Some days they didn't speak much. Some days they talked for hours. But every night, before sleep, they shared one thing without fail. 2 cups of chai on the windowsill as the sky melted into starlight. Chapter 20. The ending that wasn't. One evening, under a moonlit snowfall, Mira turned to him and asked, "Are we a love story, Arjun?" He thought for a moment, then replied, "We're not the kind that ends with a kiss under a wedding arch or a final chapter with happily ever after." She smiled. "We're the kind that lingers," he said, "like unfinished poetry that you don't want to end." She nodded slowly. That's the best kind, she whispered. They sat in silence, side by side, their fingers lightly touching. Not everything needs to be defined. Not every love story needs a conclusion. Some are just meant to be felt over time through tea and shared looks and the space between breaths. The end or the beginning. Some love stories don't end. They echo.